She's not just a preacher's daughter, she's the voice of a new generation, the heartbeat of hope for thousands. But when the storm hit Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of the most revered spiritual leaders in modern history, Sarah Jakes Roberts was forced into silence. And behind that silence, tears, heartbreak, and a battle that tore through the very foundation of everything she thought was unshakable. For months, the world speculated. Whispers grew louder. The pressure mounted. And now, she's finally breaking her silence. What Sarah reveals isn't just about her father. It's about the weight of legacy, the pain of public scrutiny, and the brutal cost of leadership behind the pulpit. Her words are raw, her emotions unfiltered, and her truth? It's shaking the church to its core. This isn't just a daughter defending her father, it's a woman revealing the crushing burden of expectation, betrayal, and healing in the spotlight. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about faith, family, and the cost of being born into a calling. You won't believe what she just revealed and why her words are shaking the faith community to its core. When your last name is Jakes, you don't just inherit a legacy, you inherit the spotlight, the scrutiny, and a crushing level of spiritual and social expectation. Sarah Jakes Roberts, the brilliant daughter of Bishop T.D. Jakes, has spent years building her own path, preaching, empowering women, and becoming a beacon of modern ministry through Women Evolve. But lately, it hasn't been her sermons drawing attention, it's her silence. As controversy and criticism swirl around her father, the world waited until now. That silence has finally shattered, and what Sarah revealed is raw, heartbreaking, and deeply human. In an emotional podcast and vulnerable social media posts, she didn't just defend her father, she opened a window into her soul. She spoke of the sleepless nights, the spiritual turmoil, and the heartbreak of watching her family's name drag through the fire. Her words left supporters weeping, critics reeling, and the church community questioning everything. In this video, we're unpacking the full story, the truth behind Bishop Jakes' controversy, Sarah's quiet storm behind the scenes, and how one woman's pain is transforming the conversation around faith, leadership, and healing in today's Black church. This is when it gets real, so stay put. Bishop T.D. Jakes has been one of the most well-known and respected individuals in American Christianity for more than 40 years. His influence goes well beyond the pulpit. He has written best-selling books, produced Hollywood movies, and founded the Potter's House in Dallas. However, high visibility is accompanied by severe scrutiny, which recently became intense. First, there were financial inquiries. Concerns regarding the usage of the church's money were voiced by longtime detractors and former members. Social media posts raised concerns about whether donations were going toward upscale lifestyles or back into the community. Bishop Jakes then appeared to make remarks that many saw as politically tinged and possibly even manipulative toward his flock in a video that went viral. The internet went crazy after that clip appeared on sites like YouTube and TikTok X, which was once Twitter. However, it didn't end there. Documents and emails purportedly related to poor management and domineering conduct inside Potter's House leadership were made public by an ex-employee who chose to remain anonymous. Even though independent sources haven't confirmed these documents, they have gone viral and raised grave worries regarding spiritual abuse and internal operations. Allegations included accusations that Sarah Jakes Roberts herself was drawn into internal power battles inside the church, that staff members were punished for asking concerns, and that pressure to maintain appearances over authenticity was present. All of a sudden, the Jake family was being criticized for more than simply their spiritual leadership. As a brand, they were being criticized. Several followers found this to be terrible. For many Black believers, Bishop Jakes had been a father figure. Millions of people have been brought out of emotional and mental darkness by his teachings on empowerment, business, and healing. It was inconceivable to even entertain the possibility that these accusations might be true. However, Sarah remained silent during the online uproar over Bishop Jakes. She didn't share anything. It wasn't anything she preached. She never defended nor denounced her father. Furthermore, that quiet simply encouraged conjecture. Was she injured? Was there something she was concealing? Or did she wait for the ideal opportunity? Well, that time arrived. We'll examine the precise moment Sarah Jakes Roberts finally opened up in Chapter 2, as well as the tears that spoke volumes more than any words could. The public awaited, wanted, and pleaded for Sarah Jakes Roberts to say something, anything. When the Bishop T.D. Jake controversy reached a fever pitch, they were unaware, however, that a storm was lurking beneath her stillness. Sarah's breakthrough occurred as she was sitting in front of a small studio audience while recording her podcast live. Clad in delicate clothing, her eyes brimming with passion, she gazed into the camera and spoke the words that silenced the entire room. Covering up sorrow you haven't properly processed is not the same as protecting someone you love. Then she stopped and started crying. There was no press release. It wasn't a fancy reel on Instagram. This was unadulterated, human, and raw. For the first time, Sarah admitted that the discussions about her father had had a profound impact on her, and that she had opted for silence because, as she put it, she was attempting to survive it. People believe that because we are leaders, we are immune to being broken, she continued. But the child in me wasn't ready to talk, so I had to sit in my own suffering. I wasn't prepared to deal with what people were saying about me, my family, and my dad. Not because she provided solutions, but rather because she was honest. The room exploded in cheers. Sarah acknowledged that the previous several months had put her to the test in unexpected ways. She talked about how she found it difficult to strike a balance between her father's loyalty and the mounting demand to react in public. She once stated, "It's hard when your hero is human. And it's even harder when the world is waiting to crucify him before hearing the whole truth." It was more than just the emotion that made the moment so potent. It was the clarity. Sarah wasn't making a defense or denying anything. She was making a complicated confession. The conflict of simultaneously being a human being, a leader, a daughter, and a public figure. She discussed the late-night phone conversations she had with her father. They both prayed, wept, and sought to comprehend God's work. She disclosed that some of their family's discussions were painful, challenging, and essential. This was more than just a vulnerable moment. For those who watched, it marked a turning moment in their lives. For the first time, they recognized Sarah as a daughter in agony, rather than merely as a preacher or influential figure. She didn't cry out of weakness. Particularly in a society where leaders are frequently viewed as untouchable, they were revolutionary, even if she didn't provide everyone with all the information they were looking for. What she did provide was more impactful than any headline. Grace encased in truth. Here's the twist though. Sarah's emotional disclosure caused a whole new round of criticism once the show aired. She talked too much, according to some, and too little, according to others. Following Sarah Jakes Roberts' moving podcast appearance, the video quickly went viral, being clipped, shared, and analyzed on various platforms. Instagram Reels showed her confessing with tears in her eyes. Within hours, YouTube reactors started posting their interpretations of the TikTok discussion, which was rife with interpretation. The responses were mixed, as was to be expected. The response actually demonstrated how splintered the religious community had grown as a result of this dispute. Her devoted followers, who viewed her vulnerability as a daring display of spiritual maturity, were on one side. They praised her integrity, her self-control, and her refusal to share private information in order to win over the public. Comments such as "This demonstrates true leadership." She made no defense or denial. "It's sufficient that she told us the truth. Pain sometimes requires room more than a microphone." The video was reposted in support by pastors including Dr. Anita Phillips and Dr. Darius Daniels, as well as gospel musicians like Jonathan McReynolds, who reminded followers that leaders also experience pain. Women, especially those in ministry, expressed a great deal of empathy after realizing that Sarah's emotional moment mirrored their own unspoken challenges. On the other hand, things quickly became ugly. She was criticized for diverting and for using emotional appeal to divert attention from the important issues. Some said she was evading responsibility by using evasive language. Some openly questioned her spiritual purity, implying that she was more concerned with upholding her father's reputation than with standing up for what was right. Sarah cried, according to a well-known Christian YouTuber, but she didn't elaborate. Where's the openness? Where's the remorse? Better is due to the church. To make matters worse, some started looking into her background. They attempted to use her past traumas as evidence that she was never a good leader, bringing up her divorce and teen pregnancy. It was character assassination, not merely criticism. Sarah, however, said nothing. She ignored the criticism for more than a week following her podcast. Not a single tweet, comment, or correction. She fell silent once more. This time, however, the stillness appeared deliberate rather than a sign of dread. She let the storm to pass. According to ministry insiders, she retreated during this period, holding secret prayer calls with her woman-evolved staff, avoiding public appearances, and even delaying a planned speaking engagement in order to, as one source put it, grieve in private before speaking in public again. Here's the twist, though. She was not broken by the response. She was magnified. The number of podcast subscribers to Woman Evolve increased in the days after the criticism. Her views on YouTube tripled. Women from all over the world started to share their own accounts of feeling ignored in church settings, attempting to reconcile faith and suffering, and defending imperfect family members. Inadvertently, Sarah had started a movement and a discussion about what it means to be faithful in the gray areas, to love someone while holding them responsible, and to speak the truth, but still paying respect to your childhood parents. Bishop Jake was no longer the only topic of discussion. The topic of discussion was how the contemporary church handles flaws. However, the question remained in the backdrop of everything. Did Sarah have something to hide? What was meant by her statement that the little girl in me wasn't ready to speak? Sarah Jakes Roberts was a giant's daughter long before she ever took the stage herself. Her last name was associated with pressure, expectations, and public scrutiny from the moment she was able to walk. Bishop T.D. Jakes, her father, was more than just a pastor. He was a man who packed arenas, a cultural icon, and a father figure to millions of people. Sarah, however, wasn't a follower at home. As a daughter attempting to define herself, she watched her father balance celebrity, power, and faith. And from the beginning, her existence served as an example of how suffering can flourish in an environment of visibility, devoid of privacy. Sarah got pregnant when she was just 13 years old. In the history of her family, it was one of the most well-reported events. The story was carried by Christian tabloids. Whispers came from pulpits all around the nation. People made judgments. While several gave shame, others offered prayers. Pregnancy would be a private subject for most teenagers. It was a scandal connected to Jake's legacy for Sarah, and the baby's birth wasn't the end of the shame. For years, it plagued her relationships, interfered with her ministry, and made her doubt her own value. She has already discussed how she felt like the family let them down in sermons and interviews. She was silently struggling with melancholy, low self-esteem, and the feeling that her life would never fit the call placed on her name. While her father spoke to thousands about destiny and purpose, this is where things become even more complicated. Sarah had more in mind than simply recovering. She was being observed as she attempted to recover. Each error grew in size. Every action is evaluated. Every mistake is seen as a sign of disobedience. Some people never allowed her go past the image of the 13-year-old girl who failed the bishop. Even as she started to establish herself, write books, start conferences, and preach all over the world, the little girl in me wasn't ready to speak, she stated when she recently sat down. It was more than merely the current dispute. It amounted to a lifetime of being told to remain motionless, maintain your strength, and defend the pulpit at all costs. Sarah's tears were actually a release that had been building for years. She had defended the church, her family, and the ideal of Black Christian perfection. And now that she was an adult with her own ministry, she didn't want to bear that silent burden any longer. She never betrayed her father, though. She never revealed personal information, made accusations, or lost her temper. Rather, she exemplified a healing style that is uncommon in public ministry: truth with grace, accountability with compassion, and suffering without retaliation. However, this raises a much more significant issue that the church has yet to adequately address. When the platform turns into a jail, what happens to the children of preachers? When you become traumatized by your folks' calls? When you lose your peace because you feel pressured to preserve your family's legacy? More significantly, what occurs when you eventually get enough? Sarah Jakes Roberts made a different decision in a society where maintaining one's public persona frequently takes precedence over one's personal recovery. She didn't try to correct the story or jump to defend. She let the tears do the talking instead, not only for her, but for all daughters, preachers' children, and religious women who have ever had to endure suffering in silence. The discussion may have begun with a dispute regarding Bishop T.D. Jake, but Sarah Jakes Roberts' response took it to a deeper level. This has nothing to do with scandal. Generational wounds were at issue here, about discovering how to be honest with someone and still love them completely. about shining your own light by stepping out of someone else's shadow, not to disparage them. Spiritual leaders are still people, she reminded us, that sometimes God works best through our broken places and that platforms don't make sorrow go away. And let's face it, her flawless handling of the situation wasn't what made her strong. It resulted from her sincere journey through it. What do we learn from this, then? Perhaps we should no longer demand perfection from our leaders. Perhaps it's time to make room for grieving, process, and complexity. Perhaps, just perhaps, it's time we discovered that love and truth can coexist. Sarah Jake Roberts is overcoming her father's controversy rather than only surviving it. By doing this, she is guiding us into a new sort of church where tears are prophetic and healing is holy. How did you feel about Sarah's answer? Was she too gentle? Or was she just what the religious community needed during this tense time? Leave a comment below with your opinions. Not only headlines will do, we want to hear from actual voices. You should watch this video if this tale touched you or caused you to consider your own family, your faith, or your healing process. It enables us to communicate this truth to those who need to see it. For more unvarnished, honest, and illuminating tales about faith, scandal, and the people behind the platforms, subscribe to World of Stars. Additionally, remember to share this video because it will help someone who is still dealing with silent suffering to know they are not alone.